get into us and lead us not into temptation.
We're the whole time gathering more.
This is Pope Elon, One-Eyed Jack and the Shells. I wonder if Elon's heard this song. He has to know. He is one of the popes of the space papacy. And we base all this off of the script they've given us. Werner von Braun wrote about the Elon who would colonize Mars, and he specifically said that they would model the governmental structure on that of Rome. So we're exporting some really bad ideas out into the universe, at least if we go that route. It makes a lot of sense when you look at the bigger picture. And right now, Musk is reprising the role of Constantine with X, which I affectionately dubbed Disease X, which I believe is a huge power grab, and it's all about consolidating the worldview, along with the other agenda, establishing in the minds of the public that we need a higher authority, we need a Bible, we need a priesthood. We cannot be trusted with all this information running amok. And you'll see this case being made again and again. It's problem, reaction, solution, and Musk is actually part of it. A case in point, this is from Breitbart. New York Times twice alters Israeli strikes kills hundreds in hospitals headline. And there are real world consequences for this because people go off rioting. Very inflammatory. And this is all done on purpose. The New York Times reportedly edited, and this is again after the fact, a headline twice on Tuesday about a blast that blew up a Gaza hospital, changing the title each time to reflect less blame against Israel for the tragic explosion. Now, my main takeaway from this is that the people who respond according to whatever they're given within the first 5 minutes and then form their opinions, who lock in on those opinions, are the opposite of skeptics. To be a skeptic is to suspend judgment till you have more information. You have someone like Ben Shapiro who is clinging to 40 decapitated baby corpses, trying to preserve his credibility. And I'm saying that it is not a virtue to rush to judge and to go with your emotions and to chastise people who don't feel the same way about a selectively curated collection of alleged facts. And nowhere or at no time has it ever been clearer that we are right. We have been right this entire time. And I call this tonight, this live stream is Mind Space Wars Intensify. And this ties into Elon Musk. Because if you ask me, the new age, the age of Mars, the age of Horus, isn't about space travel. Space is allegory. It's about the inner space, which they're taking control over. And here you have Musk, whose website is being used as a catalyst for increasing public demand for regulation. They're going to want the internet equivalent of a pandemic lockdown to cure this misinformation virus. And they're all falling for it, and it's laughable. From our perspective, I look at someone like Tim Pool, who's scared of videos from Boston Dynamics that these robots are going to come kick his ass, and it's like, that's an animation. But he doesn't know this. And they don't know. Maybe some do at some level, but for the most part, they're so insulated, they don't know, which makes them even more disgusting. This is why I call Ben Shapiro a psychopath, an MSM fundamentalist. He really is the moral equivalent of a suicide bomber. And it's all based off what? Lies that they fall for? See, the lied to, the believers, do not have the moral high ground. One of the points I made last night is that the skeptics, the auto hoaxers, we have the moral high ground. If you're still a death clinger, if you're bitterly clinging to the desperate hope that there's some dead bodies beneath one of these atrocity stories, you're on the wrong side of the fence. You really are. You're on the wrong side of the ice wall. All right, it is 10/18/2023. Mind Space Wars Intensify. A couple of interesting things. Tomorrow is going to be an earthquake in Seattle or some kind of a drill. Let me go ahead and play this short clip. It has something to do with the missiles at the hospital, some kind of story. And look, we're so reality fluid. I kind of make fun of Brian Stavely because he says we're reality fluid. And I coined that term, by the way, and the Mandela Affected have grabbed it. I called them transdimensional reality fluid. They're not going with transdimensional, but they took the reality fluid part. But we really are reality fluid. It's really a matter of political persuasion, which facts you choose to agree with. It's a schizophrenic world stage. Let me play this clip, though. You'll find something here of interest.
And now the highest probability appears to be that this was an Islamic Jihad rocket. And as crazy as that sounds, the statistics are clear. In past rounds of fighting, some 33% of Islamic Jihad rockets that were fired into Israel fell short and landed in Gaza. Now,
So 33% of Islamic Jihad missiles don't make the target and land in Gaza. Friendly fire. Friendly Jihad. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and continue here. Tomorrow is 10/19/2023. Take out the zeros and reverse it. 119223. Or 9/11 and 3/22. We do live in a wilderness of mirrors, and they do mirror everything. And this is straight out of Aleister Crowley, Magic in Theory and Practice, and these numbers do relate. I mean, I could just point out a few examples. Let's look at a couple. Rodney King hit on the head 33 times, beat for 1 minute 19 seconds. 119 is obviously a 9/11 tie-in. His name is King, and the consistent symbolism here associates King with the 33. That's why he's hit 33 times. Reginald Denny, who was there at the end of the riots, his name Reg, King. He's 33 years of age when that happens. Or then we get the George Floyd thing, Twin Cities, kicks off, 5:25, a day where the sun set at 8:46. 9/11 started at 8:46. He was kneeled upon by Derek Western chauvinism for 8:46. Twin Cities, Twin Towers, and that's just scratching the surface. But my point of it is, there's a lot of mirroring, even with the 9/11 being flipped to 6/11. And you can find 6/11 references all over the right wing, all over white nationalists' narratives attaching it to the Turner Diaries, whether it's Timothy McVeigh's assassination date or execution date, or in the Batman movie, when the Riddler / Q-inspired activists blow up the bridge or the dam and flood the election, puts Gotham underwater, 11/6, inverted 9/11. We talk about this all the time, but just pointing it out, tomorrow's a big day, and it just happens to be a day where they are preparing for some kind of earthquake drill in Seattle at 10:19 in the morning. Another couple of connections. 9/11, Revelation 9/11 talks about this abyss, and we've had this conversation about the abyss has been brought up in a number of contexts, specifically with this Israel-Gaza thing. But then the individual, the 33-year-old, falling into the abyss, the reflection pool at the 9/11 memorial. So there's a few different storylines that have been popping up here, but the abyss is a reference from Revelation 9/11. And we're talking about 9/11. The inverse of 9/11, or 119, I think may correlate to the fall of the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11:9, which is still a 9/11 reference, because the tower, the Titanic, these all symbolize the same thing. I even extend that to the ISS, and the ISS is an extension of the same symbol, and it is also representative of the Tower of Babel insofar as it's international, brings the world together, one language in a unified trip from the Earth to space. And something I used to point out, if you look at the ISS photography, the artist's renditions, because they can't send a CubeSat with a camera to take a picture of anything in orbit from orbit, you'll see that the solar array resemble the Twin Towers, some kind of reflection, and I think this is also by design. All right, joined by Ready or Not 31 Roof Chatter says started listening a couple years ago on the Paranormal Radio app. Glad you're on YouTube. We are truly in the Matrix. Yeah, and we're still on Paranormal.radio. We were in the top 13, and I didn't even really consider this to be paranormal, but somehow I guess we kind of are. I mean, it's so strange to even assert that there's a normal that you can base paranormal off of. If you're telling me that mainstream is normal, no, not really. But at least paranormal kind of gets over the political theater and gets into more interesting conversations. And I am interested in all these areas of inquiry, but I'm not an auto believer. I do have standards of evidence. Okay, let's go ahead and see who else is here. Peter W., Ollie Goering, thank you for joining. Diana South said, yeah, he said Islamic fighting, but he said it kind of like one of those characters from South Park. I'm not going to repeat it, but yeah, he did say 33% of those jihad missiles are falling short. What does it say about Muhammad? Top secret Hamas documents found on terrorists show they targeted elementary schools and a youth center and were ordered to seize hostages. This is from Bad Kitty Unleashed on Twitter. Has a blue check. You can trust them. Israeli first responders found the documents on bodies of killed Hamas terrorists and shared them with NBC News. And here are the attack plans. So these secret documents must have been written on the same material upon which they printed the 9/11 hijacker, the passports. And by the way, the leader of the hijackers, Muhammad Atta, like attacks, Muhammad attacks, Muhammad Atta was 33. And that was 90 days after 33-year-old leader of the domestic terrorists, Timothy McVeigh, was electrocuted. But this was pointed out by Emptier Bliss. He said, it looks like more 9/11 scripting. Amazing how these documents survived the bombing and were so intact and legible. This is more Scooby-Doo justice. Something happens. Within half an hour, you know who did it because they unmask the bad guy and they find their plans. But that's some magic paper. I'd like to get some of that. Maybe they should make children's backpacks out of it so they can survive school shootings. You know, I was actually looking into investing in Kevlar backpacks to profit off of the fake dead kid industrial complex, but you know, I have some moral qualms with the whole PSYOP entertainment complex. It's just as bad as the military industrial complex. It's actually the same thing. Okay, here's another fascinating clip, another auto-believing fool, another non-skeptic. So you have the non-skeptical media, by design. 24-hour news cycle of abuse. They cram 48 hours of news into any 24-hour period so that you never have time to suss the facts, to go through the different accounts and determine what could be true. You're meant to rush to judgment. If you're rushing to judgment, you're not a skeptic by design. The original skeptics were known for specifically saying it's about suspending judgment. Now, this is Piers Morgan, and he is blatantly lying, which is also gaslighting, where the media knows that they can strong-arm their way into defining reality. They know they're lying, but they know that eventually they're going to burn everybody else's books and their stuff is going to be carved into stone, so they just have to repeat their quote truth. This is Piers Morgan lying about the 40 babies.
But when you say decapitated 40 babies, you are planting a certain image with a certain trigger in people's mind.
Who has said that? Who has said 40?
Who has said that? You have said 40 decapitated.
Who has said that?
You have repeated.
No, I haven't.
What?
I've never said that.
There you have it. Piers Morgan says, I never said that. And he's being chastised because just claiming that there's 40 decapitated babies, that's incitement. You can't do that. And then say you didn't know the effects that rumor would have before the rumor has time to get cleaned up. Look at the damage that Jussie Smollett did. The news that this beloved actor was lynched by MAGAs and doused in bleach and barely survived got around the world. People were marching. They were ready to burn down police precincts. They were ready to peacefully protest all over the place. And then it turns out it was a hoax. But the people who automatically go for the agitprop look stupid if it's uncovered later. Now, here's Piers Morgan being contradicted.
You haven't said on your show 40 decapitated babies?
I choked up earlier reading this new revelation about 40 babies being...
I choked up earlier about 40 babies. He literally says this, and he's crying about it.
I choked up earlier reading this new revelation about 40 babies being killed.
Oh, my God.
And some of them being beheaded. And I was like, how can...
There you have it. I mean, look, it's the lying media. But the lying media, contrasted with the truthers, are just as adrift and lost in the sea of irrelevance. The only ones that aren't lost are really the infinite plane radio variety auto hoaxers, who aren't rushed into judgment because we don't fall for other peer pressure, we don't fall for the crisis actor tears. Nobody's going to say, you must believe right now. It's like, make me. And they would like to. I mean, the best they could do is kind of coerce you into putting a rag on your face and giving you $1,200. Little stimmy check. Peter W. says, imagine being so paranoid from the fake news that you buy your kid a Kevlar backpack. Well, you know what industry is huge right now? Bunkers. You know how many people are buying bunkers? Like, well, the main thing about it is that these things are useless. They're fundamentally useless. Every single scenario invented is fake, for which you would actually need these things. And when it comes down to it, it's not going to save you anyway. I mean, I hate to be a black pill pessimist, and I don't recommend this book, but there is an interesting book on the subject called Contingency Cannibalism. And it just makes the point that if you're a hoarder, guess what? You're going to have to fight off the zombies. Masses of people are eventually going to come for your stash. Like, I know if things go really bad, the first place I'm headed, Richie from Boston's house. Maybe Alex Jones's house. Alex Jones has a great deal of storable food items, I imagine. And he's not using those until he exhausts all of the neighbor's ass, which is kind of smart if you think about it. It's like you don't tap into your own reserves until you've exploited everybody else's. It's very American of him. But yeah, he's not going to touch his own storable foods until he's devoured his neighbors. And he did specify that he was going to eat his liberal neighbor's fault because this is all his liberal neighbors first because it's their fault. Okay, let's see what we have here. G33 has joined us, asks if this is live. Yes, it is. This is live Infinite Plane Radio. For the most part, I'm going to try to do this like 9:11 p.m. to 11, 9 to 11-ish. Mornings as well. In fact, Friday morning, I'm going to be live on a podcast, which I'll send out a notification for. Just rode bus with the man who was preaching. This is from Mr. Trustworthy, one of our IPR press pass carrying reporters out there. I just rode a bus with a man who was preaching the Bible to other passengers, apologizing for it with, "Excuse me, God wants me to preach." He announced that he lost his daughters in the Twin Towers on 9/11. Okay. Interesting. And it's hard to argue with that. You know what's really sick about it? Is that the people who fall for this are the best people. The only people who fall for these stories and they get suckered into it based on sympathy and survivor's guilt. Like if you have survivor's guilt from Sandy Hook, even though your kids didn't go there and stuff, it's because you're a good person and you feel for them. And the good people are being taken advantage of. I mean, they're all just sheep. You know, these wolves that barely even conceal it, wolves in sheep's clothing, just openly, eating people at this point. NASA delays spacewalk a second time due to a leak on the ISS. ISS is still leaking. Hope they don't drown because it's underwater. Now, this might be code. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not just Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is the Terminator. He is T2. T, or testosterone, is a toxin, according to James Cameron, director of Terminator. T2 going back in time to stop JC from saving us. Yeah, that's basically Satan and Jesus, JC. The Terminator line is when the sun dies, and this is more sun god symbolism. That's why it was significant that George Floyd died 846, sunset 846, because the sun is killed by the Prince of Darkness, Set. In the movie Terminator 2, you have the nuke going off, among other things, but the other part of this is that not only is he coming back in time to kill man, it's to kill man because of global warming. It's actually to save Gaia. The same story that you hear in James Cameron's other works like the Avatar series. And I think Avatar 2 is the new Blue Marble. I think it fulfilled the same propaganda purpose as seeing Gaia in its entirety. They immersed you in Gaia with that movie and the idea of plugging into this global consciousness. That's all brainwashing. But my point is, Schwarzenegger was designed to be the bad guy, the enemy. And that's why he's, I think, here saying what he's saying. Because he's part of this thing called World War Zero, where he's teamed up with Senator Kerry, John Kerry. And it's called World War Zero. And World War Zero was announced before the COVID thing came down, which really kind of, I think, helped move them forward. But it's a movement, it's an American coalition, John Kerry, to fight climate change. And their stated objective is to cut man's carbon footprint in half by 2030. That's one of their goals. Now, if you just replace the word carbon with life, because it's all code, it really is. You breathing, that's what they want to stop. It's not about cutting back on the consumption of dino juice. In other words, it's an exterminationist movement, World War Zero. And John Kerry's a skull and bonesman. They worship death. So he's hanging out with the Terminator. And they're talking about getting rid of half of us, or cutting our lifespans in half, or getting us to not move as much. All these overlapping agendas, but ultimately it's about control. And it's about preparing us for neo-feudalism. But Schwarzenegger came out yesterday and he said, Democratic and Republican leadership ranks need fresh blood. So when he says they need fresh blood, on one hand it's like, okay, they want to recruit new people, or maybe they literally need fresh blood. I'm not really sure. Just bringing it up, when Schwarzenegger calls for fresh blood, I'm hearing it from the mouth of the Terminator. There's got to be a subtext. Screw your freedom, exactly. He apologized for saying screw your freedoms, but I don't accept the apology. Trump tests the gag order by sharing an article that reveals Letitia James's home address. They're setting the stage, just like they did for January 6th. They're setting the stage for some kind of a psyop, some kind of an atrocity, and the atrocity is going to be pinned on anybody with a MAGA hat. It's going to happen sooner than later. Jay Diggs says the movie World War Z was a zombie movie, and I think the climax was set in Israel. Coincidentally, they're showing World War Z tomorrow downtown at one of these independent theaters, and I'm actually going to go. I already have my tickets. I haven't seen it. I read George Romero's criticisms of it, and I share his disdain for what he expressed at that point anyway, for this transition from organic effects with props to CGI. Doesn't look real. But I'm going to go watch it anyway. I didn't watch it because I was protesting this. I've been protesting the visually dumbed down movies, aesthetically, but it looks fake. Their standards dropped. And for the longest time, I thought they were just being cheap and were replacing people. No, that's not the case at all. This entire time, they were dumbing us down so we'd all end up like Tim Pool, incapable of determining real from fake if it's on a screen, and assuming if it's on a screen, it's got to be real unless it's fact-checked and then proven to be fake. But now fact-checking is even being fact-checked. Check the fact checkers. Listen to this, Laura Loomer. The photo composite proves that it begs the question, how did 500 people die in a parking lot? Now think about this. This is Laura Loomer, one of Trump's, I guess she's a Trumper. She's been like an attack dog for Trump. One of Trump's attack dogs. She's been going after Ron DeSantis. But this is a normie in the political realm, in the political opera, literally auto-hoaxing. I mean, this is the type of stuff we would say. This is Laura Loomer. How did 500 people die in that parking lot? Did 500 people even die? The hospital's still intact. Where are the alleged dead Palestinians? Has anybody seen any bodies? And these are all valid questions. It reminds me of the Pulse shooting, where you had 300 people getting massacred by this AR-15 wielding jihadist, son of a Taliban guy, security guard, who happened to be an actor, by the way, Omar Mateen. They said there were 300 people in this disco. But when you look at the overhead photography and footage, it's like, wait a minute, there's 7 cars in the parking lot. You're saying 7 cars had 300 people? Are these some kind of LGBTQ clown cars and they can fit 80 people in each car? I don't think so. I think it was a hoax. And here we have someone talking about this latest supposed atrocity, and amazing that we're at this point where even the blue pillars, even the mainstream and alt-mainstream propagandists are having to recognize that they are blind. They're all stumbling around in the dark. Tim Pool says, crazy that while people are arguing over who was responsible, it was never asked if the hospital was even bombed at all. Wait a minute here. Crazy that nobody auto-hoaxed it? This sounds like 9/11, where you have people arguing, was it Israel, was it Bush, was it Muslims, or was it space lasers and direct energy weapons? Crazy. You have people arguing for years over, who did it, when no one's asking, did it even happen? He says the assumption was it happened. And this is the thing. All of these mainstream media types have their built-in assumptions that it happened as presented on the screen. Whether there's more to the story or not depends on whether or not they're leaning towards the political horseshoe fringe where they get more extreme. Then they just have alternate explanations as to who did it, but they never subtract from the essential basic claims. This is a conundrum, and I think this is being done on purpose. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to set up guardrails in advance so that people have more trust and faith, and you don't have people getting to the point where they're calling everything a hoax just because they want to maintain their sanity and don't want to own a claim they can't stand by. This is a crisis, but it's not new, but it's really pronounced right now. But I think it's by design. Like, I think if they wanted a uniformity in how this story is played out, they would deliver uniformity. But I think the objective here is to make the public say, hey, look, we are at a critical point where we need to decide if we're going to go ahead and allow free speech to remain free, or can we get the WEF in here to put some order into this chaos, which is the objective. This is why the EU has talked about fining Musk 6% of his revenue, why the EU has talked about even blacking X outs altogether. All right, let's see, going through your comments. Lean Dion says Gaza turned to a parking lot like a staged hospital scene. They can stage anything. They can simulate anything. And at this point, it's just a movie set. And if you say otherwise, I'm like, well, what's your basis? Propaganda. Partisan propaganda. Choose your own propaganda line. It's insane. It's to me, like I said, it's non-skeptical media. The mainstream media is non-skeptical. The alternative media is selectively skeptical, which isn't much better. But this is great because it's making the case for Autohoaxology 101, and I am preparing to get that project rolling starting later this month. Now here's another one. This is being blamed on right-wing radio. Breaking news. There's a couple stories like this. Illinois landlord Joseph Zuba stabbed a Muslim to death. He was paranoid about Hamas and the Day of Jihad after listening to the radio. On October the 13th, Friday the 13th, we had this Day of Jihad coming, and you had a lot of people on the right saying, don't leave your house, don't get on the subways, don't get on the plane, stay home. Well, here you had someone who went out there to go fight against the jihad, and he got his knife and he stabbed some kid to death. And this is being blamed on the radio. Now, let's say it's real. If it's real, he was radicalized by the MSM. This is another MSM fundamentalist psychopath like Ben Shapiro. This is what I mean when I say it's a religion, and it's a fundamentalist religion. And he's really just responding to the propaganda. But now let's say it's fake. If it's fake, then it's even more tragic, because he went to war and committed real murder because of something that wasn't even real. That's even sicker. All right, let's see. Oswaldo said they went hard trying to fake kid dolls. Yeah, and the dolls make people look away. Who wants to look at a photo with 20 dead kids and people gathered around mourning? Nobody. However, if you don't look, then you have no business saying it's real. And this is an important point. There are so many people who are responding to secondhand accounts. It's like, why are you even talking? Why are you speaking as though you have some authoritative claim to these facts? Especially in this day and age. I don't trust such people. Like, if you didn't see it, then don't say it was real. Don't beat me over the head with that dead kid's corpse if you didn't actually check its pulse, if you didn't determine it was dead. They use it like a cudgel. It's actually emotionally abusive and manipulative. You're basically a crisis actor. If you're advocating for the position that fake dead kids' lives matter and we need to be more respectful, you're a crisis actor. And crisis actors' feelings don't matter. The gags, I hope they all get replaced by CGI. They definitely don't have the same protections that the SAGs do. But looking at these dead kids, these dolls, they all had closed eyes. They looked like they were sleeping. And one of the points that I was making on Twitter yesterday, on Les Luther's channel, when he was showing how these things were all fake setups, is simply that when people die, their eyes open. They lose that. They lose the moisture in the eyes, for one thing, the dehydration, but the tension on the eyelids is gone. They open up. You have to manually have them closed. You got to use a little bit of super glue or an insert, but you can't just close them. It doesn't work that way. Same with the mouths. You have to get to sew them closed. The movies don't show you this, and yet you look at these dead kids and it's like, wait a minute, they're all sleeping peacefully with their mouths closed and their eyes closed. How did that even happen? And that's why it's important to have an open platform think tank where people who may have a piece of the puzzle can bring it to the table. They rely on your ignorance so you can fall for their tricks. Hyper-realistic mass casualty drills using realistic dolls that have internal organs that they can intubate. Like, this is the level of sophistication. Just because you see bodies doesn't mean they're real. You have to look deeper, and you can't go with the stories. You had people who were ready to go to war because of some rave attendee paraded around in the back of a truck who was dead. And then you find out, no, actually she's alive. Well, which is it, dead or alive? Which is it, 40 dead babies or none? Or some babies, some decapitated, or some burned but dead babies regardless. Like, are there at least dead babies to get mad over? And then we can decide, whether or not it matters how they were killed. Shouldn't it just be on principle, we found a bunch of dead babies? But they made it about beheading. And they did that to be shocking. They did that to be traumatic to the true believers. And it worked. It angered people and it terrified people. One other point. The outrage, the manufactured outrage about the 40 headless babies happened to be on the 33rd anniversary of that infamous account by a crisis actress, Nayara, about the incubator babies in Kuwait. 10/10/1990, 10/10/2023. Same story. This is from The Independent. People who are obsessed with celebrities may be less intelligent, study suggests. There is a direct association between celebrity worship and poorer performance on cognitive tests. Yeah, I am not surprised by that for some reason. And celebrities are not just celebrities. They're louche magnets. But these are louche magnets that are built on archetypal images. They're designed, I think, to facilitate some kind of role in the occult pageantry of the true rulers of this world. It's idol worship. Okay, we talked about Piers Morgan. Pathetic. John LeBon tweeted this. Chances are most people who read this are surrounded by folks who truly believe in nuclear bombs, sanction options, and World War III. An understanding of the war hoax is like an inoculation against existential fears of mass destruction. Les and Real Eyes Radio are doing good work. Absolutely. Infinite Plane Radio is mind war inoculation. You notice that we were not triggered. Like the world went into an emotional roller coaster in the last few days. And it's incredible to me how coordinated all this stuff is. I'm going to retweet that podcast that was recommended by John LeBon if you follow me at IPS Insider. How you had Modern Warfare 3 released the night before, immersing tens of millions of people in a simulation of war, and then war breaks out the next day. That's one of the clearest examples of concurrent programming that I can point to in recent memory. I mean, that really had people including something in their frame of reference that really shouldn't have even, been there. But it's all about opening that Overton window, making things seem like they're more plausible, believable. Laura Loomer tweeted, the hospital in Gaza was never bombed. CCTV footage proves that the rocket misfired after it was fired from a cemetery behind the hospital. I have the footage and the timestamp. It shows a rocket, not an aerial bomb. Meanwhile, the large online accounts are likely being paid by the subscribe button, by Hamas. Well, whatever the case is, there's money in clickbait, misinformation, truther bait, engagement bait. It's all baiting. It's all bait and switch. When we say bait, we mean bait and switch. It means that there's nothing of substance that they were originally advertising. And it's shameless. It's almost like a Ponzi scheme. It's one of the reasons why I stopped willingly paying for my blue check. Now, I have a blue check because I was e-grabbled by the richest man in the world at 3 in the morning when I was asleep. Yep, Elon Musk e-grabbled me in my sleep and charged me for a blue check on an account that I wasn't even using that is blocked from spaces and live streaming. Ollie Goering says, louche conduits. Yeah, I would say so. I've been spending a bit of time doing research in this matter. Apparently, Aleister Crowley referred to the Kundalini as the magical current. And this really does tie into the idea of the louche battery. And the idea of the Kundalini is it's built around the notion that your consciousness is actually bigger and more inclusive than what we experience through our egos when we're focused on terrestrial survival, but that the activation of higher modes or different modes of consciousness is like a carefully guardrailed or gate-kept secret, but through their occult pageantry, through their rituals, their symbolism, and everything else, coupled with your attention, they are able to engage you on those other levels, which we generally call subconscious. But I don't think that does it full justice when we think about, they're subconsciously influencing you. No, I think they're influencing you in ways that, you could say subconscious, deep mind. But they're certainly not asking your permission. And one other thing about in my recent research on, sigils and magic and symbols, etc., is that the participants don't have to know the full import of what they're doing. They don't have to know the meaning of any of it. They just have to be there and give it something, their attention. You just pay it your attention. You're actually paying it to enslave you, to put you into some kind of bondage so you can be maneuvered into an alternate augmented reality. Okay, let's see. Someone sent me this meme, Finding the Omen. It has Damien Thorne at the bottom of the ocean. They sent this to me in response to something I had posted recently. Point Nemo. Again, Omen backwards. Point Nemo, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, is also the site of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu. The Kraken, which is a reference, I believe, also to the Challenger in the Abyss, which we talked about earlier, which would be Apollyon, or Abaddon. And this location, Point Nemo, is also where NASA drops its dead satellites, and they call it the Spacecraft Cemetery. So fallen satellites, fallen angels, Elohim, elder gods descending, all these things tie in to this same location. And I have some expectations for next month. We're coming close to 11/3, which is Godzilla's 69th birthday. Godzilla is a Kraken archetype, and all the movies are connected to this bigger story. Godzilla arose from the nuclear tests, so he's actually a metaphor for the nuclear bomb. That's actually what Godzilla means. The fact that he's 69, 69 is the crab, which we talked about the meaning of the crab, the Cancer symbol on the solstice, when we had that Titan submersible implosion. These are all connecting together to the beast in the abyss, the beast of the sea rising, replete with 33s. You know how many times James Cameron went down to the Titanic? 33. They store Godzilla, Subterranean Realm, 33. It's the 33rd film by this director, 37th in the franchise, but the numbers all speak for it. They speak for themselves, and there's one other point. The fact that Godzilla's birthday is 11/3, that's the day the One World Tower opened, 13 years after the twins went down, rising from the ashes. And originally, they were going to call the One World Trade Tower the World Trade Center Phoenix. Donald Trump was actually a part of that. He was a part of a plan to rebuild it as the Phoenix. What does the Phoenix do? It rises from the ashes. So it rises and opens on 11/3. The Kraken Day. Godzilla's birthday. Godzilla rising. So there's some kind of subtext here about the attack from the sea in Seattle, likely. And tomorrow, 10/19, Seattle's having its earthquake drill. Why would you have a drill for an earthquake in Seattle if you weren't putting personnel in place to fake something? Crisis shakers. Whatever they're going to do. Control demolitions. Mango Penguin says, defining moment, there's no truth in fear. When you realize that life improves, questions will arise, but it only means you've begun to start thinking for yourself. Inner self matters. Yes, superstition. When I say fear, I'm talking about superstition. I'm not literally saying that you're shivering, that you're crouched you're trembling under a desk, or that you see a 5G tower and you shield your eyes. Like, I don't mean that they're scared like that, but if you're saying, we ought to be scared or we ought to be concerned about toxins being dumped from airplanes. Okay, well, maybe you don't sound scared, but what you're saying, and if you say you're not trying to spread fear porn, you're gaslighting, because you're literally spelling out a nightmarish scenario. Hey, those planes are actually dumping poisons on you, your friends, your kids, your grandparents. Everything you love is covered in poison. And someday they might turn on the 5G tower and ignite the skies and you're all going to burn. I'm sorry, but that's terrifying. Don't tell me you're not a fear pornographer. Don't tell me you're not spreading superstition, which is what is happening. Most red pills are actually just superstitious augmentations to your formerly sane reality. Well, relatively sane. Sanity being defined as reflecting the consensus, which we know drifted from what we would consider to be sane. I mean, it's not normal to be hive minded, easily triggerable, Stockholm syndromed MK Ultra victims. And that's where we are as a society, where reality is something that you argue over, you decide it by consensus agreement. This side says that this side shot their hospital. This side said nobody's hospital got shot. But the one side that hates that side insists that it happened. And those who don't believe it are Holocaust deniers. It's like, if I don't believe it, I'm worse than Hitler. I don't have enough facts. So they're coercing you into belief. In fact, this is like a forced coercion into the MSM religion. And I'm a conscientious objector to their psy-war. I'm not going to be converted or coerced into believing any of this stuff. It's a religion. I talked about this yesterday. Look at this blatant religiosity they're infusing into politics, where you have Roger Stone, who's pretty much as godless as can be, shamelessly exploiting the religiosity of the MAGA base, who have somehow conflated Trump with Jesus, then Moses, then King David, and have been waiting for his apotheosis, but apparently, and Roger Stone clarifies, they don't deify or worship him yet. Right now, they still worship the Lord, but they are seeing Donald Trump as God's apostle.
For those in the left-wing media know, we who are affiliated with pastors for Trump, we do not deify or worship Donald Trump. We worship the Lord, but we recognize Donald Trump as his apostle.
All right, so Donald Trump is an apostle of God. Good to know. Here's a tweet. Got told today that the storm is coming. And OMG, how can a storm take 6 years to appear? Weak-minded Q freaks keep believing that mess after all those years. MA Stay Legit says the morons have been moving the goalposts since 2017 and gobbling up every new excuse out there. And they say we listen to everything the MSM says. Interesting, right? They both are high on their own supplies of their toxic misinformation. Like, oh, they're snorting blue pill, they're snorting red pill. But they're both high on something that cuts them off from objective reality. Alt Easy says Donald is not an apostle. Oh yeah, he's not. He is in the Bible. I think he might be the destroyer. He might be a bad Don. Notice they did paint him up as a Don, a mafia Don, and Abaddon or Abaddon, Apollyon, the Destroyer, Godzilla. Donald Trump is Godzilla. He's the beast of the sea. That's why the Kraken number is associated with 11-3 when he cracked the system by jamming up our elections. That's what January 6th was about. 1-6, not a coincidence, planned decades in advance, written into the script. That's why he kicked off his campaign in Waco, called it Final Battle. That his 2024 campaign is the final battle, kicks it off in Waco, the night after Netflix releases Waco, American Apocalypse. In Waco, the conflagration was the result of the ATF's going in after 1.6 million rounds they had stored. 1.6 sounds familiar. Oh, January 6th. Kind of like Dominion suing Fox News for defamation for 1.6 billion. Like, the numbers really do tell the story. And some say, oh, you look too much into the numbers. I'm like, oh, really? What's the national debt? How old's the guy that just fell down the well? How old is the top celebrity of the day that's being talked about, Taylor Swift? It's like, the answer is 33 for everything. More often than not. So often that, to be honest, this is coincidence theory to suggest that anything in the news is organic. We do live in a news-bent reality. Israel is paying YouTube to place advertisements like these aimed at children. This is a commercial. We know that your child cannot read this. We have an important message to tell you as parents. The imagery is a rainbow with unicorns jumping over the rainbows. Now, rainbows exist, space stations and unicorns, not yet in the realm of possibility. We can debate unicorns and space stations if you want, but rainbows, non-debatable. And rainbows are not proof of a, quote, dome. Rainbows are actually circles. You just have to get high enough to see them. But anyway, this commercial is aimed at children. 40 infants were murdered in Israel by the Hamas terrorists. Just as you would do everything for your child, we will do everything to protect ours. Now hug your baby and stand with us. No, the commercial is aimed at the parents, but it says we know your child cannot read this. So it's designed to be attractive to children. Meanwhile, it's talking about the 40 decapitated kids. And they're paying for this. Mango Penguin says, quote, television, mass mind control through cathode rays, beliefs are sold, example of what is correct and what is not, opinions are presented as facts. Yes, the media is a liar. And I think it's important to point out here, I use the word monolith to describe media. It's monolithic, and it's a symbol that they use since Space Odyssey about the space age. But the space age is really about them taking control of your inner space. And the monolith represents this. The monolith is the movie screen. We have merged with the screen. That's one of the big messages behind 2001 Space Odyssey, 2 into 1, the reality and the screen merging as David Bowman merges with the monolith. We have merged with the movie screened reality. And when I talk about the media as a narcissistic construct, I don't mean Fox. I don't mean CNN or the celebrities. No, I mean in its entirety, mediation as a presence in your life, even though it has many different facets and it's coming from all different places, that the general temperament of the consensus reality as mediated by media writ large is in fact a narcissistic vampire. There's no escape from it. As a presence, as a ubiquitous presence in your life, as an inescapable presence, there is always that filtration. Let me go ahead and open up phones. The night before the simulated earthquake in Seattle. Open phones. 505-349-0420. Hey, caller, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Atem.
Oh, awesome. Okay, we got one here. What do you?
Did you hear me?
And what are you calling about tonight?
I'm curious if you believe everything is fake, or some of the dead babies in Palestine are real.
If any part of it is fake, and it's within the realm of fakeability, and there's predictive programming, I'm going to say it's fake until proven real. And I'm waiting for the evidence. The burden of proof is on them at this point. Have you seen anything that convinced you as of yet?
Have you heard of Adam Green? And he does a good job of portraying how the Bible is kind of just like a mass-produced brainwashing technique.
I am familiar with some of his work, and I'm in agreement with him that I think mass media has supplanted what the Bible and what holy books are used for. I think it's about getting everybody on the same sheet ideologically, shaping their values, and installing a priesthood. So, yeah, I think it's a mind shackle. It's not for liberation, in my opinion.
I'll be honest, I haven't listened to you all day, so I don't know what your topic is. Do you have a topic for tonight, or you're just riffing on the Palestine war?
One of the topics was the fact that the mainstream and alt media people are having to basically choose what they want to believe, and it's just like throw everything at the wall, see what sticks. But both sides are caught up now in the fact that they don't have any skepticism They don't have time to be skeptical, and they're being caught short. I think they're being exposed as being essentially propagandists. Ben Shapiro has really taken some hits, and he deserves it, obviously.
He's going crazy. Like, people would be like, he's growing his hair out, and that was called crazy. Like, growing your hair out was called crazy back in the day. But it's literally like these people in religious circles are basically village people. And if you look at the movie The Village, it's the perfect metaphor of what people are going through. Sorry. These days, because you could raise a child to believe in Santa until he's 20. If you control him enough and you control his environment enough, and then you have 5 of his friends the same way controlled, you can control any child to grow up believing very viciously, much like a paladin. I don't know if you know what a paladin is, but he's a fighting, holy armored knight that would fight to the death in his belief that the Easter Bunny is real. If you grow him up in a culture, in a village, surrounded by trees, and you tell him that everything out there wants to kill him. So if you keep controlling these few people, do you get where I'm going?
Yeah,
Or do you want me to keep elaborating?
I think you're right, because the Village, I've referenced this movie a lot. The Village is controlled by the elders who dress up as monsters and have the kids do lockdowns.
Yeah. Okay, so you've heard of the movie. So these village people, I analyze or simile the Jewish religion. I don't want to say the 3-letter J word, but the Jewish religion. They are basically like a utopia. If you've seen the movie Utopia, they are village people. They're controlled. They're brought up. They're raised, taught these crazy ideologies that people want to kill them, everything, blah, blah, blah. And
Yes.
then they have...
Okay,
they
you're
have
onto something
business.
here. What you're saying here applies to, I think, every minority or cult religion, like, or for example Scientology. They're taught that they have to segregate from society because everybody is a suppressive person. And if you associate with suppressives, you have to go through this cleansing process. But I think what you're saying is, yeah, these religions put people into villages, which I call closed systems. And these closed systems, these villages, are held in place through psychological manipulation by the people who wrote the system, designed it, the priesthood. And the people who are the village people are just dupes, and they trust their own psychological abusers who lie about the outsiders. And that's typical of controlling relationships. You lie about the outsiders.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to just go back onto the village people. So you got the Jewish religion. It's a small group, and they have a circle, okay? And then you want to imagine, what's it called, the diagram where there's 2 circles interlapping? Is that a podiagram?
2 circles interlapping. I'll look into it really quick, but go on.
I think it's a podiagram. Okay, but then you have the Christianity, where they're just also village people, and they're grown up, and it's a consensus. It's a fear of death cult. They're scared of death. Everyone's scared of death. So all of religion is just basically scared of death, and now it's just, I mean, it's just everyone's scared of death. So like religion got so vamped. Is vamped a word?
Like vapid, yeah, like
rampant, maybe rampant.
What?
But it's out, like, because the concept, like, well, you've seen the test where like there's a beep and like a lady stands up and like she sits down and like she keeps standing up and sitting down, and another person comes in and sees her standing up when the beep goes off. So it's like there's like a appeal to a sense, like
Conformity test. Yeah,
consensus
I've seen
or
these
something.
conformity tests, and there's some of them are really bizarre. Like people crowd into an elevator, and the person who's not part of the study sees all these people suddenly face the wall. And usually, just because of the consensus, that one person will turn around and face the wall. And they do rely on manufacturing a consensus. That's why we have all these bots repeating, this is
Exactly.
true, this is true. It's all to influence those individuals out there.
Exactly. It's like a hive mind mentality that we are going through, and it's exactly because the founding fathers. I mean, I don't want to. I'm kind of not distracting, but changing the subject. Like there was a pilgrimage of Christianity that came over to America, and I don't know what happened back then, but I feel like it's a pilgrimage, and that's why they were called pilgrims. And they came and they tried to tell the Indians that were living freely about Christ and the Bible, and if they didn't want to conform, they were called racist because they didn't want to conform to Christianity. So the Indians were shot, and then the Indians that accepted Christ were giving muskets. So they gave muskets to all the Indians that accepted Christ, and they pushed the whole Christianity agenda across America until they hit Mexico, and then yada yada yada. Remembering the Alamo, there was just a whole pilgrimage across America once they found gun arms, I guess, ballistics.
Yeah, well, okay, to this village concept, the religions themselves, I think these religions are essentially the mental framework, the new operating system that they want installed to get everybody on the same sheet.
It
I,
it
I,
still is.
I use the
It
word
still is.
religion interchangeably with worldview, a regimented worldview. And you can everything you can point at with these different religions, you can also point out with the mainstream media's religion. Just like the true believers in everything the mainstream media says, they have their counterpart myths. They're the ones who believe that the ocean levels are rising, for example, because
No,
the globe.
well, I think you have a broken finger. I think you think everything's fake, but some stuff is real.
Well, what is real? Tell me what out of the big Psy War, what singular event can you point to that was organic and real? Because I know what's real. I'm not saying I don't believe. I'm not a reality nihilist, but
Was the war in Iraq not real?
now the war happened, but was it a media
That's
event,
what I'm
or
saying.
was it
Okay, yeah, the
was it a,
propaganda to start it, the fuse normally isn't real. The fuse isn't normally real, but the aftermath, the firecracker pop,
no, no, that's false
is
flag theory.
normally
False
real.
flag theory is a false representation to kick off a real thing. And I'm saying no, that the instigations are just as fake as whatever happens. And you weren't there, I wasn't there. It's very compartmentalized. I have very significant questions, and people always argue, but my war, like you can just assume it happened because it's so big it couldn't be faked. It's like, no, actually, it's so compartmentalized. It's full of drills, it's full of
No,
levels of secrecy.
I believe you. I understand the departmentalizing because the Buffalo shooting, like a couple years ago, I tried my hardest to break down the whole event. And I got the case number. I went to judges trying to get Public Information Acts to get the crime scene photos. And the crime scene photos are not released to the public still to this day. So you can't get crime release photos of these mass shooting psyop drills at our home, in our homeland, whatever you want to call it. So there is bullshit. Sorry, I don't want to say the S
Well,
word,
let me point this
but
out really
there's
quick. You said I had that I'm calling everything fake, and I'm saying this. The philosophical error of calling everything fake preemptively would be the same as calling everything real preemptively. What I'm doing is I'm saying I'm judging it on a case to case basis, waiting for the facts, which is very different. Whereas the people who believe it, you're not sitting around waiting, oh, I might believe it. Let me give it 3 or 4 days. No, people believe it at face value. and then they just wait for more facts. So, no, I'm quite the opposite. I'm truly skeptical here, and I have not found anything to sway me in the other direction. And you're like, well, there's no way they could fake a war. Oh, really? How many fake school shootings have there been in the last 22 years? What's the body toll?
That's what I pointed. That's what I knew where you were going with. I knew you were going to go with fake war to fake mass shootings. So that's why I talked about Buffalo. And I understand that Buffalo is obviously from a genuine standpoint where I wanted to prove it was real. I cannot prove it's real. I tried my hardest to prove that it was real, and nothing, like every business around the corners were signing NDAs. So if you go to Buffalo, New York right now, anyone that worked that day signed an NDA and they can't talk about what happened. And you can't go to the judge and get crime scene photos, because you would think if there's a shooting, the forensic team would come up and take photos, even though they have camera footage or CTV
Sure,
or
sure.
whatever
Look,
it's called.
if this stuff was real, if any of it was real, nobody would
Yes,
be
yeah,
publishing the
okay,
pictures
yeah,
faster than the Democrats. The Sandy Hook thing, for example, all those pictures would have been leaked to shock the conscience of America. They never produced those pictures because they're fake, and that's all the way around with every one of these events. And at this point, the burden of proof has been shifted, and you have nothing to fear. And if that bothers you, you're a death clinger at this point.
I mean, I might be a death clinger because, I mean, I'm not saying, because now they're producing Palestine photos of funerals and stuff with unedited, like unblurred out baby photos.
And have you
So
seen
now
any?
they're
Have you
showing,
seen any?
I don't live in Palestine,
But
so
have you seen the
obviously
photos?
I
I'm saying,
have not.
have you seen any photos of babies, of dead babies that you find convincing?
Well, no, I've seen the videos. Adam Green's posted them. If you even sign on to BitChute, all it's about is politics. So if you log into BitChute, all it is like, oh, look what's happening. World War III's coming. But I also think it's a false flag because they've been doing this for years and years, because apparently Palestine tried to bomb them like 3 years ago, and their Iron Dome
Well,
saved
let me
them.
bring
So.
this back to the village. I think this Hamas thing. I think
Village
look,
people.
yeah,
No,
no,
village
okay.
people.
I think Israel's the
Village
village,
people.
and I think that the terrorists attacking them are Israel's own intelligence
100%.
dressing up as the monsters. And not only that, but I think it's all sim. I think it's all drills. I don't think that what we're being shown is real atrocity. And if that offends people, it's like, well, then show me, please, because I'm looking for
I think it
facts.
might be actual real atrocity. Because okay, you've seen the Netflix. Okay, we're going back on Hollywood stuff, but you've seen the video or the movie Utopia on Netflix, right? You watched the whole American series.
Yes.
So you saw where they had the little child brainwashed in a village people type situation, grown up saying, I forget their mantra. They had an mantra like,
No, I recall they had the children are in a separate area, but again, 33 years
they
before
had
this
an
40 look,
mantra.
the 40 dead babies. 33 years before, we had this story of this 12-year-old talking about this atrocity with dead babies, and that was exposed as a hoax. If we have seen nothing but hoax after hoax for generations, why is this suddenly real? And this one has way too much predictive programming, too many 9/11 connections for me to think it's real. But if you want to give the benefit of the doubt, if you want to be a death clinger, it might be because there's an agenda. Maybe you have a scapegoat in your worldview. Do you have a scapegoat?
No, I mean, I guess my scapegoat is, I think you're pushing too far. I think some people die. Like, there's no way that they're pushing this stuff. Like, that's why I brought up the movie or series or whatever, Utopia, because the child went in and shot people realistically, but they blamed it on a different situation. So maybe people actually do die.
Well,
I mean, we
look,
don't know them.
well,
I mean,
one
the
other point
world's small.
one more
The
point that
world's small.
that goes against you. Okay, one more reason why they wouldn't be. Let's say people died. Well, we know that there's fabrication. We know there are crisis actors mixed in with these events. Do you think that the NDA would stop them from speaking and blowing the whistle if real atrocities were happening? And not just the actors, but the cameramen, the script writers, the news crews. Do you think that so many people are willingly complicit in actual mass
Okay,
murders?
my only real life situation is I tried to debunk the whole Buffalo shooting that happened like a year ago or 2 years ago, and I couldn't get any information. Everyone around it signed NDAs, and I couldn't get realistic photos. Like you would expect crime scene photos be available to the public. I can't get crime scene photos. I can't write a letter to the killer. I forget his name. It didn't really matter to me. Um, it's just nothing.
Okay,
I know the
let
judge's
me
name.
one more thing I want to run by you. One more thing I want to run by.
Run it down.
Okay, one more thing is January 6th. Do you think that anybody really died there?
Lose news? Lose news? No. Okay. That he called it kayfabe, which is realistic, like the best way to put it. So there can be, but he has his Telegram group, and I try to talk to him. I was like, can you show me? Because 44 minutes into his his video two, he showed an insurrection in Egypt where there's fake blood and all this stuff. And I was like, can you show me proof that there's realistic photos from that event uh, contriving to news articles saying it's real? Because that would be a firecracker.
Well, to answer my question though,
And he,
did you find Woo's News' take on January 6th compelling, or do you think January 6th was real?
no, I always thought, I forget her name.
Ashley Babbitt, is she dead?
Yeah, Babbitt. I always thought Babbitt never died because the main reason when it all broke out, her mother created her Twitter account 4 weeks before it happened.
Okay,
So and then
wait. If she's not dead, then all those people in that room would be in on it. You're talking about agreeing that January 6th was a total fabrication. And if they can fake reality on that level, then why do you insist that people died?
that's Homeland. That's Homeland. I think Homeland situations, because our language barrier could be easily more fake than something across the seas where they could easily set up a building with bombs and blow it up.
Well, I would point one thing else out here. The existence of the PSYOP of 9/11 proves that there is a monolithic media presence globally with total creative control everywhere. It's ubiquitous. There isn't a separate media here and a separate media in Israel, and they do PSYOPs here and it's real there. No, it's one movie production company for the world stage, one director, one eye in that triangle, and that's the all-seeing eye, but that's actually the all-seeing lens, and that's basically the establishment worldview for the entire world. There isn't a separate group. Otherwise, you would have this nation saying, oh no, you guys faked that. Or you're not really going to space. Or the left would say to the
And
right, that was.
and
You don't have people calling
and
people's hoaxes out.
yeah, do you understand enrichment? Enrichment is things for people being controlled to get jollies off. So us observing these things, there's nothing we can do to control the masses. Like there's nothing we can't set off fireworks and tell our whole city, hey, this is fake and gay. So it's all just enrichment for us as opposed to them. It's enrichment for them to live in fear, worried about nukes. So there's nothing that we can do. It's too late.
Well, wait.
So
We say nothing they
yeah,
can do.
it's
There.
blackmail.
Wait. You say there's nothing we can do,
It's
but what do
blackmail.
you mean? Nothing's happening. Like, no, we can't stop the fake missiles. No, we can't stop the fake dead kids from dying. Like, it doesn't matter about the fake dead kids dying because they're fake. There's nothing to stop.
Exactly. Well, there's nothing they can do to that. They're mad about fake kids dying. So they could worry. There can be mad about fake kids dying, and then we could tell them, or we could tell a small group of people, which are our audience is very very small that we can get to, that it's fake and nothing matters, and they look like at us that we're crazy, and then
But you're talking
they
about
can't.
proselytizing. I mean, like, look, you can get any faith behind you and try to sell it to people. Every 90% are going to look at you like you're crazy. Some will feel sorry for you. But I'm not here to proselytize. I'm not trying to give clueless people a clue. I'm only reaching out to the intelligentsia, to the aware. And I think there's at least 50,000 of us on this level of situational awareness. And there's plenty of reasons to do what I'm doing. And I'm continuing on this path, and
Is that
I'm not a bitter
the old
clinger. Look,
Benjamin?
I'm not a bitter clinger to the death and the horror show as a lot of people are. And generally, if they are, there's a political reason. Like, there is a lot of people who don't want to believe 9/11's fake because then they don't have a reason to hate Jews because the Jews did it, for example. And to say it has no effect, it does have an effect. What everybody believes matters because they're shaping our entire world based on the consensus agreement. Look what they did in 2020. So we are participants in it, whether we like it or not. It's an alternate reality game.
Well, it's called the American experiment. I don't. You already said Jews, so the Jews already call it the American experiment. So this whole situation that we're growing up on, it's just a prospertize that greed is the number one factor in humanity. Caring about your neighbors doesn't matter. It's more about greed and sin than caring about your neighbors.
I think
And they're trying to
that's
show it.
that characterization of America, America as Babylon, that's the reason why America has to fall. That's why Elon Musk is a fall guy for both individuals getting too much wealth and power, and he's taking a fall for free speech because of the damage it's doing. You're right about that. The American character has been assassinated, it's been maligned, it's Derek Western chauvinism, kneeling on a poor black. That's the vision they've given the world because they want to tear it down. It's a smear
Well,
campaign.
I hate to bring up Christianity, but it was brought upon by the pilgrims. You've heard of today people going to South America on missionary trips to push Christianity in the South, like South America. They go on mission trips or whatever. So these kids go on mission trips, much like Columbus did, but they brought firepower and they brought it hard. And then they started fencing off lands, calling it their own, having helpful people work on their lands from Africa. So
Sure.
it's just
Sure. Look. This is interesting. Like the Westworld movie series, I think they call it Westworld Park, and in some ways, I think it's just kind of a way of describing America, the American dream. And I think it was Salty Siren pointed out America is an anagram for eye camera. And if you really think about it, our entire worldview has been filtered through one agreed upon by the power elite, one viewfinder, one camera lens. That's why I call it the all-seeing camera lens now, because the cult of the all-seeing eye has updated everything, and its entire mind-shaping mechanism of religion has been turned high-tech with, the internet and TV, and we're experiencing it
that,
now.
that that's art. So you're making it art. So two people can look at an art project and give their imagination of their theory on why it was created. So you're making art, and conveniently, the population has a hive mind to where there's art in the ether type mindset to where it's kind of waves. So you're picking up on the art of humanity, and it can be portrayed in positive or negative light in the same instant that you're portraying. So you could draw a penguin and be like, oh, that's a death god of south. And then some people would be like, no, it's a bright god of infinity that could be rafted across all the flat earth or something. I don't know. It's just art. It's
Yeah, yes.
really,
Art is what, though? Essentially, we're
there's,
talking about simulation, recreation. And there's that quote, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And these days, it's life imitates psyops. They have turned movies into an art form which we call propaganda, but it's used for social change. And it's disguised as reality, and it's such a good facsimile. They moved us into a simulation, and yeah, it is art, and we are essentially art critics, film critics.
Yeah, you're creating a codex, but your codex can't see the future yet. To where it's kind of like disheartening, to where we wish we could see the future, but even for them, they wish they could see the future, so because they can't, they got to write it and self-prophesize the future. So they're doing a much better job because they have billions of dollars in credits to portray the future. So they have a much better job at portraying the future
Yeah.
than we do.
Look, the main thing that they want to monopolize, I think, it's not just money and resources and our attention. They're they're monopolizing creation itself, insofar as they are the creative directors of what we do and the shapers of our values as they move us into the new age. So I do think that they are exercising total creative control, basically playing God through all of us.
Yeah, God, they're surrounding it all by their village people, childish beliefs that religion is the main key, and that the people in power are pushing the prophecies, and then I don't want to say dupes, but the younger class, I guess the middle class, blue collar, white collar people are just following religion because they're scared to death.
Well, look,
Following religion
you still believe in the deaths that are happening
and
way over there.
religion.
You still believe in some of them, so you're still childish in your
Oh, look,
comprehension in some aspects of
child.
this. Yeah, it's a
No, I looked. No, trust me. I look, and I'm like, is this fake? And I'm trying to look at the
You have a
reactions, and then I
childish
feel like an off.
epistemology if you're still assuming that the screen can be trusted at face value against the backdrop of the lies that have already falsified the big story. So I'm sorry, but like it's like
Are you
believing.
gonna?
Do you
You're
believe in the?
calling me ignorant?
No,
I have an ignorant personality.
no, it's not ignorant. What I'm saying is it's a childish epistemology that it's based on a faithful, um, almost I would say obsequious attitude towards the media. Like you're gonna trust
Okay,
them.
so you've seen the new videos the past 24, 38 hours
Yes, I'm
of
constantly
all.
analyzing it, and I'm watching people's reactions to it, and I'm watching how people choose what they want to believe, and you cannot trust it.
So you think
And look, you're not a
so you think
skeptic.
all the
You're not a
dead
skeptic.
people are fake rag dolls?
You're not a skeptic if you've made up your mind
No,
already.
I'm
You're
a
not
I'm a
you're
skeptic.
not a skeptic because
I'm a
you're not a
skeptic.
skeptic because you've already made up your mind. There's not enough information to make that assumption or that assertion. You cannot say for a fact you know that. There's not enough info.
My skepticism. Hear me out. My skepticism was normally if there's a real dead child, they normally blur it out. To where these videos that are popping out and they're holding up dead babies, I was like, real dead babies are blurred out. You don't show a dead baby on camera.
Okay, well, I've
So,
looked at those. I've seen problems with it. The babe, like, what happens to your eyes when you die? They
but
open. They open. Find me a dead body on TV with open eyes, and then we can talk. I was in 92 Mike, Mortuary Affairs. We worked with simulated bodies in the field. Look, I'm not fooled by movie magic. If you are, that's what I'm saying. You have a relationship with media that your trust is really high, even though you've been lied to. And if you're still trusting somebody after you've been lied to, you have been taught not to trust yourself. They control you.
so our eyelids are relaxing when they open.
Well, look, I'm not going to debate whether something's real or not. I appreciate the call very
No,
much, though.
I'm
And
just
look, send me something via email. I have someone else trying to call in. Have a great evening. And I hope you don't have any nightmares about these scary things that you believe in, all these frightening possibilities.
take it easy.
You want to call in and argue for the existence of fake dead kids? By all means, let's debate. You believe in these fake dead kids. I don't. Your reasoning for believing in them is you saw it on TV in the context of a bunch of lies that have been exposed, in the context of mendacity, the likes of which we rarely see, with these alt media types basically calling each other out for not believing hard enough. It's so subjective to claim that you know, and that you're going to call us and say, I think you're just preemptively, not believing. Yeah, I'm a non-believer. And you are a believer. Good for you. Oswaldo says he can't see past the Israel thing. Yeah, I can tell you exactly why he won't tell you this. The reason why he believes in it is the same reason he didn't want to say the word Jew. Because the people who believe the Jews control the world, like he does, this this is an old canard, but the people who believe that don't want them to be innocent of actual atrocities. And if we say 9/11, nobody died, it's like, wait a minute, I've been mad here at the Jews for years. I've been mad at Bush for years, and you're saying that there's no reason to be mad? Yeah, you got looshed. You got vampirized. The vampire media sucked your soul, your empathy, took advantage of your compassion, and you just being a good person, you were a sucker for Big Brother. And you just have to let that go. Some people can't. So you want to cling to the dead bodies? Elephant Tusk says, talk about an uninspiring caller. Well, what do you expect? He lives in a world where all these atrocities are happening, but he also brought up the village. And you can't say that this is the village and then still believe in this stuff. When you recognize we're in the village, you have to recognize that we're not even talking about real or fake. We're talking about narrative structures used to shape human behavior, to shape our society. And right now, the main objective, I think, is the destruction of free speech, the free flow of information. They're going to say, look, free speech is causing a lot of problems. Nobody can get the facts right. We don't know who to cry for. We don't know who to be outraged at. New York Times changing headlines and it's causing riots. The misinformation is causing real damage. It's all by design. Lean Dion says, make war by way of deception. Yeah, and there's a pretty good one, a good quote from The Art of War about the greatest generals win the war without ever, I believe, withdrawing their sword from the scabbard. And the whole idea is that they win with psychological warfare. Then you have Saul Alinsky in his Rules for Radicals about how the threat of the thing is worse than the thing itself. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, how you doing? Yeah, just wanted to call and kind of put my 2 cents in on everything that's going on. I'm a new subscriber. I kind of came across you on Odyssey through, I think you did an interview with Johnny Cerrucci a while back, and then one of your videos popped up like 2 weeks ago. And yeah, just been listening every day since to all your shows. And yeah, I mean, talking about, fake dead kids, the second I heard about Sandy Hook and I found out that none of the parents got to see their kids and identify them, that threw me off right away from the second I heard that. So I was like, wow, this is crazy, because back in 2003, I had one of my first cousins was killed in the Station nightclub fire out in Rhode Island. And knowing how that all went down, I knew that my aunt had to go and identify the body. And I said, well, yeah, this is pretty much normal procedure on an event like this. And when I heard that, I was like, dude, there's no way this is real.
That's a good point. Normal procedure based or compared to what we see on TV, which is like an episode of Scooby-Doo. It just gets solved really quick. And when you compare the two, there's no presumption of innocence. There's all kinds of things that you wouldn't see. For example, I called a police department and I asked about this one. What's with all these minors after a school shooting running to the cameras and talking about it? We're talking about eyewitnesses. They're going to contaminate the story. Right. They're putting themselves in danger, and they've just been traumatized, and now they're going on TV. That wouldn't happen in real life. And then if they're minors, their parents have to have signed a waiver. So how does that happen?
Exactly, man. And I mean, certain things can easily be controlled. I mean, just the word compartmentalize, man. I mean, that's what it is. You break things down, you separate information, and it's probably a little more intricate than that. But I mean, like, just everything looks so fake, man, when you see shit on TV. It's just, I mean, the ISS footage, anything that goes up in the sky, it's like, I mean, what are you even looking at? It's everything looks so fake. It's like if the Earth by now is round, and I'm not saying I know for sure. I don't think anyone really does for sure. I mean, some people who've done the research probably do, but I mean, just show a goddamn picture of the Earth from outer space and just, put it to rest. But they don't. So, I mean, until that happens, I mean, what are you going to do? And
Yes.
and who knows if that'll even look real. And at this point, you wouldn't even be able to tell if that's real. So, I mean, it's like there's really no technology's too good that you can't even tell what's real or fake anymore, which is already talked about. So
Yeah, and now that's fascinating to me because they're saying that this inability for us to differentiate between real and fake is a huge societal problem. But the fascinating thing about it is that we've already been deep faked. So what it really means is it's a contrived problem. So we say, please regulate the free speech that we have. Regulate the flow of information. They're trying to get us to give them powers of censorship when no, they've already compromised our reality.
exactly. Question: you do touch on a lot of numbers and stuff. I was curious if you're familiar with like Zachary K. Hubbard's work at Gematria Effect News.
I am. I think everybody is, actually. He's one of the big names in it. And I followed his breakdowns on sports and the narratives around sports. And,
Right.
I'm definitely interested in all the patterns. I don't always agree with the conclusions, but I'll listen to anybody's assessment. But he may not be full-blown auto-hoaxer. I don't know if he still thinks people die. I'm not judging based on that,
Right.
but I'm not sure where he is. But at a minimum, calling out the fake events, to me, it's always good.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And quick question: I got your email the other day, and you mentioned chemtrails. Now, I don't refer to them as chemtrails, and I definitely, there is shit that goes on in the sky, but I definitely don't think I'm being poisoned, and I don't worry about that shit. But do you think geoengineering is a thing where they are able to manipulate the weather and do certain things in that sense? I mean, I can go back to who was that old CIA director, John Brennan, and he pretty much he's like stratospheric aerosol injections, and he's speaking to the CFR in 2016, and
Right.
he's getting up there pretty much telling you exactly how it's going to happen. They spray it in front of the sun to reflect it, and then when you watch some of these things that are in the sky, and then you take a photo of it, go back 20 minutes later, it looks like it's all dispersed around and stuff, exactly how he said. So I'm saying to myself, now if they are trying to do this, I mean, it is happening like he would say it is, but then again, I have no idea what the hell's going on up there. So
Yeah,
but you can
that
see
one,
it,
on this one, okay, there's always a thing I bring up about how chemtrails are said to come from planes, and some people say it's in the stratosphere. But the main thing is this: the premise that man can alter the climate has not been established, and that premise is the basis for climate change, that man's doing it.
right?
And I think that the
It's true.
geoengineering line of thinking gets the people who see through climate change to accept that premise by taking a different route. So
Right.
I
Okay.
kind of think it's a trick at this point. I think they would like us to think they have the power to control the weather. But again, if they had the power, would they share it with us? It's another question. I'm not totally closed-minded on it, but
Right. And I mean, they play 4D chess all the time. So, I mean, that would fall, if they were doing that, that would definitely be part of that equation.
and they would blame it on Republicans.
but-
They would heat everything up and say, "Look what you guys did with your capitalism."
Right. And they already kind of do it right now anyways, because, I mean, so many people can, document what they see and observe it. But then when it's widely talked about in magazine publications and stuff, they act as though it isn't happening. So it's almost like you're already deep in it in that sense too. So that's the tough thing, and that's the one thing that you put in there that I was curious because I mean, yeah, you can see that stuff is coming out of the planes, but I'm not worried about getting poisoned by that shit. But
Well,
I mean, at the same time,
okay, that's another point I want to bring up really quick. Is I was introduced to this concept by someone saying, "What are they spraying?" And that question is actually,
Right.
that's the psyop. It's a loaded question. It assumes that there's something in the plane coming out, when the condensation trails are just a byproduct of hot jet exhaust in high altitude rarefied air. So there doesn't have to be a substance injected. So it's not technically a quote spray any more than
Right.
when a boat goes over a lake and leaves a wake. Well, that's not a spray. They didn't dump anything. It's just a disturbance in the atmosphere. So I kind of think that the way that the question is asked it just assumes that there's a substance being injected, and I think we can rule out any substance.
Right, right. I have listened to a few videos of the guy Climate Viewer, Jim Lee. Have you come across any of his stuff?
Have not. I'll look him up.
Yeah, he kind of gets into it, and his take, he did an interview with, I mean, he still believes in, I mean, I listened to him because he did some stuff on the whole Maui thing, and, you know, people were talking about the, you know, the lasers and all this stuff, which, I mean, is obviously complete bunk, but, I mean, he kind of broke it down, and I was listening to some of his takes, and he did an interview with Dr. Shiva where he kind of, and I don't really, it was just an interesting interview because Shiva kind of broke him down, and he really got him to explain what his views are on geoengineering. And he thinks that it's all happening within the fuel that they're putting in the planes, and that's how they're using it to manipulate the weather in that sense. Whereas it's not like they're poisoning people, but they're using it to manipulate the weather and geoengineer that way. So it is interesting, but I just wasn't sure if you had heard his takes at all, or were even familiar with them.
No, but if there is some kind of an effort or an ability to and an effort to change the weather, I would be more inclined to think it would be stratospheric aerosol injection we can't see instead of obvious uh, condensation trails from airplanes. And some suggest that the
Right.
condensation trail theory is misdirection that can be easily discredited to distract people from the stratospheric stuff, which actually makes a lot more sense to me as well.
Exactly. No, and I think you're right, because if I listen back to one of his videos, I think he kind of touched on that aspect of it as well. So I mean, yeah, you know probably what I'm talking about, and if you
Yeah,
watched his
that
stuff,
is
you
a
would
tactic
probably,
you would expect,
that's right on.
and I'll look into it because I'm planning on doing a series of cyber symposiums on a number of these topics that aren't settled, but I think need to be closer to being settled. And I'll put chemtrails and any expert like Jim Lee. I'll put chemtrails on the agenda here. I'd like to have a discussion with people in person and live, where we bring
Yeah.
our best evidence and see what comes out of it.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I'll let you go, man. It's getting late. I'm just walking the dog here, and
Cool. Okay. Well, hey,
yeah. So
appreciate the call.
it was,
Thanks for
yeah,
listening, and call back anytime.
of course, man. Have a good night.
Awesome. Thank
All
you.
right, we'll do. Bye bye.
All right, so you heard us on Jim, on is it Johnny Circucci, who is a pretty good, really maybe one of the top researchers on the Jesuit order. And whether or not you think the Jesuit order is the top of the pyramid, I would check it out just for the research. Just like Zach Hubbard is pretty big on fingering the Jesuits as the source of all these deceptions, Jesuit theater. Masons lay the bricks, Jesuits write the scripts, all these cliches like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. You can find all kinds of stories. But when it comes down to the whodunit aspect of the PSYOP entertainment complex, I think those all amount to red herrings. And red herrings are meant to take you off the trail. And no one's arrived at the truth by chasing the same red herrings decade after decade, or century after century in some cases. Appreciate the call very much, and also the previous caller. Thank you for calling. It's always good that we have some people willing to speak out on behalf of the ones who can't speak for themselves. These fake dead people can't defend themselves, and here we are savagely devaluing them, saying that no, you don't matter, fake dead people. And so we got people calling in, yeah, fake dead people's lives matter. I don't agree with, but I respect your opinions. Fact check: Plymouth Rock cannot provide an accurate measure of ocean levels rising. The claim is that the water is at the same level that it was 4 centuries ago at Plymouth Rock. We were talking about pilgrims, and it got me thinking about this. Is sea level rise exaggerated? And some have pointed to Plymouth Rock, and they said, look, 1620, it was at sea level. 2022, still at sea level. What do you make of that? It's almost like somebody's lying. Reverse History says, nice call. Agreed on the red herrings of the so-called power structure. Exactly. And anybody who's going to claim that the Rothschilds run the world needs to read Mike Rothschild's book, Jewish Space Lasers. Excellent research. Impeccable. Undeniable. And what it proves is that conspiracy theories are designed to control part of the population that don't fall for the mainstream stories. That's the whole point of it. Conspiracy theories aren't the truth. This is the big trap. You find out you've been lied to, because we're all being lied to. So you're like, oh, look, let me find out what the truth is. The conspiracy theories. No, the conspiracy theories have always existed as an alternative truth for this bifurcated psy-war designed to put people into two distinct camps so they can make you, hate each other, basically. Peter W. says it's not the real rock from 1620. Yeah, it's not. That's why Snopes was on it. So they might have had to pull out a new rock because the other one's under the ocean. Or was it stolen? Jake the A-hole says, Tim, I've had normies tell me I should get sued like Alex Jones for saying a shooting is fake. Then I have to try to explain that Alex Jones being sued was a fake case too. Yeah, I've had people say the same thing. In fact, Darren Aldridge, Axolotl, one of the top, Axolotl, it's one of those creatures. He was one of the top moderators at Reddit, and he said before we doxed him, he used to troll me. He said that I needed to be locked up in a padded cell. I'm like, really? You want to have me incarcerated and locked up because of my memes are so dangerous? Thinks 101 says, I didn't think space lasers were religious, but what do I know? Yeah, I thought the space lasers were Chinese. But the Jewish Space Lasers book really does a lot to debunk a lot of misconceptions just by tracing the origins of stories. And if you're going to say, I know this is the story, you might want to be able to back that up. And if you want your receipts, that's the book to go to. But when you dig into it, you find that actually it's pretty much contrived and fake. And these days, they can't get away with saying Rothschilds or the Jews. So it's kind of switched to George Soros. So like the idea of billionaire villains exists on both sides, you'll notice. If you're on the left, you are terrified of Elon Musk, and he's going to kill you. If you're on the right, Elon Musk is going to save you, and he's your hero. If you're on the right, Bill Gates is going to kill you, and you're scared of him. If you're on the left, Bill Gates is your hero and savior. It's like, wait a minute here. You got billionaire villains or billionaire saviors, depending on which side of the political aisle. These are all stories. These are all tropes. It's all part of the mind war infrastructure. Peter W. says RFB has Chinese drones following him in the bedroom. I found a pretty good Richie from Boston video. I had to dig it up, where he was describing how he's just a man on the street, and he was just at a truck stop, and he talked to a couple dudes in the bathroom about chemtrails. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to go dispense red pills in a rest stop? Like, that just sounds a little strange to me. Like, I mean, you're taking a break from your road trip, and Richie from Boston comes out. He's like, hey, I got some red pills for you. Anyway, this has been great. We are going to continue this conversation tomorrow and the next day and every day after that. We have a long-term plan here. Those of you who ordered Autohoaxology 101, new books are en route, and we are going to be a full-fledged publication company here, and the store is going to be fully opened here as soon as those are out. I'm just right now stocking up on inventory. This is Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms, Auto Hoax. It's better than being an auto believer and finding yourself up all night worried about fake dead kids or fake dead people and being a supporter of the fake dead kid industrial complex. It's all just terrorism.
I'm on Auto Hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would.
Hey, really quick here. Thinks 101 says, I watched people pulling apart mosquitoes to make sure they're not drones. Like, wait till they start doing that to birds, because the birds aren't real things. Anyway, I'm putting a link below. If you want to sign up to the newsletter, I'm sending out archives right after.
Buddy, my buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996. 96, y'all. Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'm gonna be an auto hoax, and it feels so good.